Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Jimmy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm here with the Fuji xt2 in my hands, and I love this camera. It's with a 35mm lens, by the way. One of the first lenses to come out for the X series. It's a great killer combo, if you ask me. Today we're talking about a friend of mine, Steve, who wrote in talking about his new xs10 camera. Congratulations on your purchase, and he's trying to set it up the way he wants it. He says, I noticed that the LCD monitor goes dim after several seconds of activity. Or does he mean inactivity? I'm not sure which. Is this to save power? If so, how do I change this so the screen just remains brighter? Any ideas? This does sound like a power management issue. Perhaps if you bought it used, the person who had it was very conservative about power and set it that way. If you want, you can possibly do a firmware camera reset. I'll show you that on my camera, but I don't have that function on the xt2. I looked, and also before that, it didn't ring a bell. So I do have other functions, which I'll go over in a second, and I'll use your question as a springboard about power management and the different ways to do that, the way I use it. But long story short, I don't have that dimming function on my camera, nor have I heard of it. But if you have it, I believe by following along, you will see where that function is on your camera. Okay, so the first place I would go to check how things are dimming on your screen is by going to the menu and going down to this screw there. This screw is going to be where the inner workings of your camera take place, the user experience, I guess you could say, how things work together. These other things are cool options when it comes to filming and taking pictures, but this is kind of like the foundation of your camera, if you ask me. So I would go to places like user setting, and I would clear your menu settings, or also just reset your camera, especially if it's a new camera from someone else used, if that makes any sense. If you bought yourself a new piece of gear, I always reset it because it's with their settings, and people get confused when they have the instruction booklet. It's a different firmware, for example. Make sure you're on the right firmware, the most updated firmware, because they might have fixed a bug you're experiencing, and then just erase everything off your camera and get it back to baseline, and then check the firmware on the computer, see what the most recent one is. If you want to check how to do your firmware updates, my videos may help you there as well. And then you can go ahead and turn your camera back on and go to places like screen setup here. Screen setup, you can talk about the screen here, which is your LCD, or your EVF here. I'm not too familiar with your camera, but if your camera is similar to this, then you can adjust the brightness here, how long it stays on, how the eye sensor works, and how the EVF responds in terms of your preference, how bright you want it to be on the inside. So I usually have my EVF brightness inside to auto, but we're not talking about the EVF, we're talking about the LCD here. And my brightness is set to be pretty bright at this moment because I'm filming something right now. But of course, if you're outside in a bright day with a lot of light, you want your screen to be pumped up in brightness. Unfortunately, this eats a lot of battery, so manage your power, wisely. You don't want to have your camera just on as you're walking with your camera if you're not shooting anything. So you have to constantly turn your camera on and off, right? So the LCD color has nothing to do with it, but check here to see under LCD brightness if there's a dimming sort of thing there, if that is an option. I don't see it here. When you explore the menu, pay attention to the top right-hand corner where it shows how many pages of menus there are for that particular space you're in. As you see here in the top right-hand corner, there are 3 pages. So I could have scrolled down 2 times more over to find more options. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the setup menu here. You can also go to a place called Power Management and press the right arrow here with my right thumb, and you'll see here that I have auto power off, and that is set to 2 minutes. I've never played with this function, but as long as I'm here, look at this. You can have it even as long as 5 minutes, just having it on for 5 minutes. Do you think that'll eat up battery power? I think so. Not a good way to use that. So maybe 30 seconds I can toy around with, or just 1 minute. I'll set it to that. Power performance boost, you can have it just set to normal. I don't take crazy video or even power shots where you kind of machine gun shooting. I don't do any burst mode shooting, so just normal is fine. This is another way to really conserve energy. It's not the only way. Power management is about managing many things about your camera, right? It's about this. It's about how often you turn on and off your camera. It's about the color setting. It's about how vibrant you want your screen to be, how much power you want or dedicate to your EVF here. If you're using burst mode shooting, if you're doing a lot of video, you see how many things affect power management. And that dimming thing that you're talking about, I don't see it here, but it might be a great way to manage power. The one last thing I want to leave you guys with is this here, the view mode. This is a tiny button here on the EVF, and you can press this here. LCD only is probably EVF only, and then eye sensor plus LCD image display. It means they're both on right now. I press it again. Now it's eye sensor, and that's this thing right here. You see it as I put my finger near it turns off, right? So if I do this, it means the camera's next to my eye, and you don't need your LCD on at the moment. Just the eye cup is on, the EVF. So this is a great way to manage power as well. So I'm just mentioning this because power management is a very multifaceted thing about your camera. That's not any one thing. And it also depends on how different people would use your camera. Maybe one person doesn't care about the brightness of their screen, but other aspects would affect how long the battery would last. And it seems to me that your dimming of the screen is not very useful for you, especially if you have a lot of batteries on hand. You want to get the most out of your camera and have it bright all the time. That is totally your preference. Check out those areas I told you about in the menu. Hopefully you can find what you're looking for, and leave it in the comments below if you can. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you soon.